Comrades, friends, when NATO launched its illegal and brutal attack on the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia 25 years ago, Sweden was not yet a member of the military alliance NATO. However, the Swedish Foreign Minister Anna Lindh was quick to join those who supported the attack. I understand that NATO's bombing attacks against Serbian targets ultimately become inevitable, she said. In my presentation, I will discuss how Sweden went from a neutral country to a warmongering nation, among others in the NATO family, from mainly a supporter of global security to a die-hard supporter of global aggression. Anna Lindh blamed the war on the Serbian president Slobodan Milosevic, and Sweden supported NATO's tactic of bombing Serbia back to the negotiation table in Rambouillet, France. What was offered to the Federal Republic at the negotiation table was, as everyone knows, nothing more than a surrender of its national sovereignty. The demands against Yugoslavia then are similar to the condition that Sweden now voluntarily has consent to through its NATO membership and the so-called defense cooperation agreements recently concluded between the Kingdom of Sweden and the United States of America. But the membership of the military alliance and above all, the DCA agreements give US extensive powers over Swedish domestic policy. For example, it gives the US extensive power over Sweden. The DCA agreements give the US access to 17 Swedish military bases, but not only access. It also gives the US the right to exclusive disposal of areas within this military installation. No Swedish authority has the right to poke its nose into these areas. In practice, it means US military bases on Swedish territory. And of course, it also means that US can stock whatever kind of weaponry they want, even nuclear weapons. It also, but under this agreement signed by Sweden, US authorities are even authorized to maintain order in the immediate vicinity and beyond these areas covered by the agreement. In addition, and beyond, and there is the wording of the whole agreement is such as if it can't be an agreement between the Swedish authority and the US, it's the US military. It is the US military that call the shots in Sweden. That is what NATO and the DCA agreement mean for Sweden. But even worse, it also means the consummation of Sweden's trajectory from a neutral country to a warmongering nation. How did it happen? Sweden had been a neutral country for over 200 years when it all began, well before the infamous statement by the Swedish foreign minister at the closure of the last century when NATO attacked the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. Sweden was a neutral country under World War II. After the war, Sweden won acclaim for its neutrality from many quarters, not least from Jewish quarters. The neutrality did actually make Sweden a sanctuary for many Jews. But being neutral between democracy and dictatorship, between good and evil, is that really possible? Well, the Swedish government at this time had another view on the war. The file at the Swedish Foreign Department regarding the war was named the Superpower War. And when superpowers were at war with each other, the best thing a small state as Sweden could do in that situation was to stick to its neutrality. To join one or the other superpower in their conflagration would only make things worse. But was it a superpower war and not a war between good and evil? Well, England and France did not go to war in 1939 for democracy, but in a desperate attempt to prevent German hegemony on the European continent. They were indeed democracies pro forma, but they certainly had imperialist and economic interest. For Churchill, imperialist interest was paramount. Analyzing the war as a superpower war has a greater historical explanatory powers than seeing the war purely as a struggle for democracy and the good. The 1990s saw a shift, also internationally, in the overall perspective on the Second World War. The Holocaust was increasingly highlighted as the central civilizing experience of the war, something that also has its repercussions for the Palestinian issue of today. With such focus, it was obvious that Sweden's policy during the war was seen as in a different light. The security policy aspect of the war fell into the background. In place come moral issues and anti-Semitism. And it was possible to assert argument as, quote, the Swedish foreign policy during the Second World War was a policy that lacked a moral backbone. It was reprehensible to have had a political leadership that followed the principle of surtout pas de risque, above all, don't take any risk. That view of the World War II fitted as a hand in a glove for reactionary forces on the march in the beginning of the 1990s in Sweden. The root causes for this were an awaited membership in the European Union, a membership that was not fully compatible with Swedish neutrality. But neoliberal propaganda had worn down popular resistance to a union that once was instigated by some European colonial countries in order to maintain control over their colonies, but now was a full-fledged neoliberal project. Sweden became a member of the Union 1995. The membership of the European Union accelerated the way for Sweden from a neutral country to a country that willingly closed agreement with alliances, even bellicose such. The European Union is normally described as a peace project that started with the coal and steel community in 1952. Peaceful cooperation between European countries should prevent war in Europe. But a more accurate starting point for the Union is the Treaty of Brussels, that an agreement signed by Britain, France, and Belgium and the Netherlands some years before, creating a collective military alliance. It led to the formation of NATO and the Western European Union. A goal of the treaty was to show that Western European states could cooperate, thus encouraging the United States to play a role in the security of Western Europe. Indeed. If you read the history of the European Union on the Union's official webpage, there is nothing about the Treaty of Brussels, but NATO is included in the history of the Union, and rightly so. The European Union is a child of the Cold War, not a peace project. It was created to exclude Soviet Union from all cooperation with Western Europe. Cooperation between a renewed Western Europe after the World War, with its industrial know-how, and a Soviet Union with its quest for development and almost unfathomable natural resources, could have given rise to another Europe far from the bellicose continent we know today. After the admission of Sweden as a member of the European Union, neutrality was never an issue when Sweden took step after step closer to the membership. Since the 1990s, the Swedish Defence Forces has increasingly increased their ability to cooperate with NATO. The purpose of such a close cooperation with NATO is to increase the possibility for Sweden and NATO to act together in a crisis situation and ultimately in a war situation. Sweden also cooperates with NATO in standardization and capability development. Since 2013, Sweden has participated in NATO's most advanced exercises, where NATO countries practice collective defense. That is assault exercises on an unspecified enemy country. With Sweden's accession to NATO, the northern flank of the military alliance is complete, and the militarization of the Arctic is almost finished. The future looks bleak, and there is much work to be done by the international peace movement. A militarized, subjugated Europe in the hands of a whimsy and capricious US do not bode well, and above all, pose a direct threat of death to the human race. Not to end in such a bleak mood, I will mention that the president of the Belgrade Forum for the World of Equals, Sivadin Javonovic, I think it's his name, in his speech of the World Peace Council, in the World Peace Council's meeting yesterday, highlighted Serbia's neutrality with the hope that it will be preserved in the future. Serbia and the city where we are have a proud record of neutrality. Yugoslavia was the only European member of the non-alignment movement that always advocated neutrality and played a pivotal role in avoiding war during the so-called Cold War. And Belgrade was the host city for the movement's first summit in the beginning of the 60s. I think it was 1961. Thank you.